The focus on systemic racism, while more people are interested in learning about civil rights.
That's right. KCTV5's Casey Jones is live from the town of Kansas Bridge to explain how you can take a walk through Kansas City's past. Casey, this is really interesting.
Well, we know that the Metro has a deep, rich history when it comes to civil rights, and there are ways for you to get to learn some of that history. So joining me now this morning, I have Erik Stafford from KC Tour Company. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So first of all, I want you to just tell me, we are here at the town of Kansas Bridge. So tell me a little bit about the historical significance of this location.
Well, this is actually a natural landing. And so when the area was being settled, around 1820, Missouri came into the Union as a slave state. So the settlers, they came from the southeast. They came from Kentucky, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee. And they brought their slaves with them, and this was a natural landing for them to get off. This is actually at First in Maine. And slaves, when they were sold, they left from this port right here before they went down south. So they actually left from this port right here. And the Civil War actually started here in this area first, 7 years prior to its official start at Fort Sumter, South Carolina in 1861. It started here unofficially with the signing of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And that's when the border wars started.
Wow, very interesting. You're telling me a lot that I didn't know, which I'm sure a lot of people don't know, right?
Right.
So when you are out doing these tours across the area, what are people most shocked to learn?
Well, a number of things. They're really shocked about how the civil rights movement, how its roots are right here in Kansas City. A lot of those roots, starting with the Civil War, the Underground Railroad is just right across the river. You also have the jazz developed here, and jazz ushers in the civil rights movement with Charlie Parker and bebop. That's the type of music that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were listening to when they led protests back in the late 1950s, early 60s. So all its roots, a lot of the roots of the civil rights movement started here, right here in the middle of America.
Wow, that's really awesome. So tell the people how they can take a tour.
Well, my website is www.kansascitytourcompany.com. I offer 3 regularly scheduled tours. I offer Streetcar KC, a River City civil rights tour, Streetcar KC, a River City Mafia tour, and Bebop and Beyond 18th and Vine walking tours, which is a great way to celebrate Juneteenth coming up this weekend, which actually is the celebration of the freeing of the slaves.
Well, you're really giving us a nice history lesson today. I really appreciate it. So coming up in the next 30 minutes, Erik's going to join us again, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about how the civil rights movement relates to everything that we're seeing today. Reporting live from Kansas City, Casey Jones, KCTV5 News.
And as protests against systemic racism continue across the country, there's a renewed interest in civil rights.
A local historian is offering tours to help educate people. KCTV5's Casey Jones is joining us live from the town of Kansas Bridge this morning.
And Casey, there's a connection between the civil rights movement and what we're seeing in modern times now.
Absolutely, Gina. So in the last half hour, Erik Stafford from KC Tour Company told us a little bit about the history of this spot, the town of Kansas Bridge, and, you know, its history as it relates to slavery. He is back again for us. So first of all, I want you to tell me a little bit about why it's important for people to understand local history and civil rights history.
Well, knowledge of the past allows us to make sense of the present and allows us to get insight into the future. When you look at our history, and you can look at the time period after slavery, known as Reconstruction, when we had to rebuild the country, you had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments added to the Constitution. The 13th Amendment freed the slaves, except in the event that you commit a crime, so you could still be re-enslaved. The 14th Amendment gave blacks equal protection of the law, and we can see today that that's not always apparent or realized with the amount of police brutality cases inflicted amongst African Americans today. The 15th Amendment gave blacks the right to vote, but with America incarcerating more of its own people than any other country in the world, and once you're a convicted felon, you no longer have your voting rights. That right can be taken away immediately as well once you're a convicted felon. However, you can't have your voting rights restored once you're no longer on probation and parole. But all those things connect. Also during Reconstruction, you have the formation of the first police force here in Kansas City. The police did not exist during the time period of slavery. So the first police force was organized here in Kansas City in 1874 during the era of Reconstruction. Also, the police force actually originated from the slave patrols that would hide along the brush along the Missouri River to catch runaway slaves crossing over into Kansas, where they would have the perception of being free. However, just because they made it over to Kansas does not mean that they were home free, because they could always be captured by a slave patroller and brought back to their master for a monetary reward. But those slave patrollers during the time of slavery became the police force during the time period of Reconstruction. So that's how everything is still kind of connected today.
Wow, thank you for connecting those dots for us, Eric. A lot of people don't know the connection between the police force and slavery. A lot of people don't know how it originated. So I really appreciate you coming here for us this morning, talking to us a little bit about Black history. We know that Black history is American history, but it's not always taught the same. So thank you again for that. And you can take one of his tours by going to, what's your website again?
It's www.kansascitytourcompany.com, and Kansas City Tour Company's all spelled out.
All right. Well, thank you again, Eric.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Back to you, Aaron.